Masechet Kiddushin Daf Vav. Today we're going to focus on different formulas that one can use for Kiddushin and also for Gitin. So we begin. Tenor Abanan. Hareat ishti, hareat arusati, hareat kinuyali mekudeshet. A man tells a woman, gives her something and says, behold, you are my wife. You are my betrothed. You are acquired to me. All that are good languages. Hareat sheli, hareat birshuti, hareat zekukali mekudeshet. He says, you are mine. You are under my domain. You are bound to me. Also, those are valid formulas, and if he says that and gives her something, then they will be she will be mekudeshet. Now we ask, velitninhu kulahu kehada. How come we just had two sets of three? How come the Tana, meaning the transmitter, why didn't they put them all together as one list of six? Why say three mekudeshet, another three mekudeshet? And the answer is Tana telat shema'inhu vegarsinhu. Because the transmitter heard them as three and another three. And so just as he learned it, so he teaches it. In other words, the professional memorizers, their job was not to change any of the language, but rather to transmit everything exactly as they heard it. So this is the way it was originally formulated, and perhaps there was originally one Tana in the sense of a teacher that taught this set, and some other time someone gave a shiur and gave the other set. So these were originally taught at different times, and so they're remembered as separate lists. Ibaya lehu, miyuchedet limahu, miyuedet limahu, ezrati mahu, negdati mahu, asurati mahu, salati mahu, sigurati mahu, tachtai mahu, tefusati mahu, lekuchati mahu. All right, we ask about all of these. Behold, you are special unto me, meaning unique to me, or you are the one for me. That's a good translation. You are designated to me, or Ezrati. Now the next few are all come from the Pisukim regarding the original creation of Chava. And which follow the following Pisukim. So Hashem creates a woman out of man by taking one of his either ribs or sides and closing up the flesh under it. At the site, a little surgery there, and he takes that selah, and he says, Zot apam esem asamai, Zot yikare isha ki meish lu kohazot. And of course, she is also called Aezer Kenegda in the pasuk right before. Right, Selo Aezer Kenegda. I will make a helpmeet as a counterpart to him. Okay, so now that we see all these words in the original creation of the first woman, first wife. What if we use any of those languages? Ezrati mahu. A man tells his bride, "You will be my helper." Negdati mahu. You will be against me. Hopefully not. Or my counterpart. What about that? Asurati, you are gathered for me, right? Kind of gathered to be designated for me. Salati, you should be my rib. Well, will you be my rib? That sounds romantic. Sugurati, the one that's closed for me. From the language that Vayiskor Basar Tachtena, Hashem closes up his flesh in that place where from which he took the rib or the side. Tachtai, that's from the word tachtena. He closed her. So will you be in place of where that side was taken from me and be my missing half? What about that? Tefusati mahu, will you be my seized one? Now, this sounds like that papos, remember, who locked his wife in the house, right? So that sounds like a guy who goes and seizes a bride and takes her by force, right? Will you be my seized one? Lekuchati, the one who I have taken. That could be from ki meish lukoha zot. She is taken from his side, so the taken one, or because ki yikach ish isha, that he is taking her. Okay, so what about all of these? So we don't have an answer to most of them. However, peshot miha chada, Let's answer one of them. The Tanya. If you say, behold, you are my taken one, that's valid, because that's the basic word when a man takes a woman. So likuchati, although it could also be a reference to Bereshit, is also a reference to Devarim. And if it's a reference to Devarim, ki yikach, that's the main verb that's used for marriage, for Kiddushin. So therefore, certainly, that should be good. The other ones, we're not sure about. Ibayelehu, harufati mahu. Harufati, my espoused one. This comes from the phrase, neharefet leish, which can mean someone who is designated to, or indentured, acquired. It has this language of kind of slavery, or designated for marriage. It's an ambiguous term. So what about that? Tashema de Tanya haomer harufati mekodesh sheken bihuda kodin larusa harufa. Braita says, yes, if you say, behold, you are my harufati, that's fine, because in Judea, in their dialect of Hebrew, they call an arusa charufa, someone who's betrothed, they call her charufa. It's used in the marriage sense there. After all, also in Isha Necharefet Leish, she's designated for marriage to a man. So it has that sense in the Torah as well. And in Judea, that's the regular common usage of Charufa is Arusa. Now, we ask, Yehuda, Havya, Ruba, Ba'da Alma. So what? In Judea, they say, is Judea the majority of the world? Though everybody in the world has to follow the dialect of Judea? Right, it should only be good in Judea, not anywhere else. So how could this Braita say it's good everywhere? So we answer, Hachi Kamar, Omer Churufati Mikodeshet Shneemar, V'hi Shivcha Necherefet Leish, Ve'od Bihuda Kodin Larusa Charufa. We're missing part of the Braita. The full Braita should be, if a man says, you behold, you are my Charufati, that's fine, because the Pasuk says, Isha necharefet leish, she is espoused, designated for a man. And also, besides that, in Judea, they call an arusa a charufa. So the Judea was just an added reason, and therefore, but really the main reason is the pasuk, and that would be universal. So we ask about that version of the Braita. Vihuda ve'od likra. Wait a second. You're going to say Judea, and as a further proof, if you have a pasuk already, pasuk is 100% proof, right? This is a basic biblical Torah definition. Why would you have to add to that? It's like saying someone has $1 billion and he also, has a jar of pennies. Right? That's not in addition to anything. We wouldn't add on the local custom of Judea to a proof from a pasuk. Ela hachika amar haomer harufa bihuda mekudeshet sheken bihuda kodin larusa harufa. Rather, a new version of the Braita. What it meant to say is, if someone says, if someone who lives in Judea says, you are my harufati, then that's valid, because in Judea they call an arusa harufa. So that works in Judea. If you're in Bavel, in the Galilee, where you don't have that usage, then it would not be good. So it's important, whenever we look at a definition of a word, we should look at the local meaning. And everybody there uses a word in a certain way, then that's fine. Now, b'may askinan, ilema b'she'en medaber imaha al iskei gita v'kiddusheha, menayada maika amar la, ve'ela b'medaber imaha al iskei gita v'kiddusheha, af al gav de lo amar la nameh. So, and all the questions that we've been asking so far about all these ambiguous terms, we have in what case are we asking these questions? If it's a case where they were not talking about matters of Gitin and Kiddushin at all, they were talking about the baseball game, and all of a sudden he says, Hare'at harufati, Hare'at miyu'edetli, all those terms that we said before. So how do you know what he's talking about? How do you know if he means you are special to me, you are a special worker, you are a especially good dresser? I don't know. What does it mean? So if there's no context, we have no idea what it means. But, so that it can't be that, because then it would surely not be good. But the other side is, they were talking about matters of Gitin and Kiddushin. They're talking about, hey, what are you thinking about getting married? And where do you want to get married? And where should we do it? And the hall and all that. And so they're talking about these things, and there's people there and all that. And then he says, Hare'at miyu'edetli. Well then, even if he didn't say anything actually if he just gives her a ring and without saying anything, it would be valid. How do we know that? Is a Mishnah on Maaseh Sheni. Titnan, hayam medaber al im isha al yiskei gita b'kiddusheha v'natan la gita b'kiddusheha v'lo perash Rabbi Yosef omer dayo. If the man was speaking with his wife about matters of gitin, if it's for gitin, or matters of kiddushin, if it's for kiddushin, and he gave her a get, or he gave her money for as kiddushin, even though he didn't say anything, he was just quiet. He didn't explain what it is for. Rabbi Yosef says that's sufficient, right? They're talking about divorce. Should we get divorced? What do you think? What's going to happen to the kids? Where are you going to live? Right? All that, and then he gives her a get. And he doesn't say, Hare zo gitech, or Hare at mutet lechol adam. He doesn't say anything. It's obvious that he's giving it to her, giving her a get, because they were just talking about that. And the same thing, right? If they're talking about marriage and he gives her money, it's clear that he's giving her this because that is kiddushin. And according to the Rabbi, you don't have to say anything. Now, there is a disagreement there. Rabbi Yehuda says, even if you're talking about that matter, you have to say explicitly, Haret mikudeshet li be taba'at zo. Or Hare zo gitech, you have to say explicitly. However, Amar Huna Amar Shemuel, Halakha Rabbi Yosef, Shemuel ruled that the law is like Rabbi Yosef, that if you say nothing, that it's still valid. So that's now our question. When we gave those about 10 different questions that we just had, if they're not talking about matters of gitin and kiddushin, then it's ambiguous, so it should definitely be no good. And if they are talking about gitin and kiddushin, then for sure they're good, because even if you say nothing, it's a valid kiddushin. So why are we in a quandary about all of those formulas? And the answer is, Amri le'olam be'medaber ima al iskei gita v'kiddusheha. B'idei hevla v'shatik hachinameh. Hachamaskinandi havla ve'amar la behane lishaneh. Actually, if he was talking about matters of gitin and all the questions are when he's talking about matters of gitin and kiddushin. And if he would just give her a coin and say nothing, in fact, they would be married, because you can tell from the context, right? Talking about marriage, he gives her money. This is not just a tip for allowance. This is obvious. They're talking about kiddushin. So it's obvious, and you don't have to. And they would be she would be mikudeshet. But rather, these questions, what are we talking about? That he said these languages, and saying this expression is actually worse than saying nothing. And therefore, we wonder, when he says these various languages, is he saying it for kiddushin? You are the one for me, right? You are special to me. Is he saying that as kiddushin? Or maybe he's saying it to hire her, right? You will be my helper, ezed. What does ezed mean? Okay, ezed, you'll be my helper. You're going to be my secretary from now on. So ezed could mean wife. It could mean assistant. And so we're not sure what it means. So actually it's worse that he said something. So in conclusion, if they weren't talking about gitin or kiddushin, in this case kiddushin at all, and he said, here, you be my ezed, then that would be nothing, because there's no context there. And if they were talking about kiddushin and he was quiet and gave her something, that would be good, because they're talking about kiddushin and he gave her something, so then we assume it's for kiddushin. The question, the middle area, is they had been talking about matters of kiddushin, but then he comes and says, Hare at ezrati, right, be my helper. So is that the same context and is for kiddushin, or by saying something is he actually changing the subject? Listen, we were talking about marriage, maybe we should get married, maybe not, but you know what? I just want to hire you to be my assistant. I don't need you as a wife. You could just, take notes in my office. So we're not sure if he means wife or if he means to be an assistant. And therefore, those are the questions, teko, and they are left unresolved. All right, Gufa. Now that we mentioned this matter, Hayam daber im ha'isha al iskei gita v'kiddusheha, v'natan la gita v'kiddusheha v'lo piresh, Rabbi Yosef omer dayo, Rabbi Yehuda omer sarich lefaresh. So we saw this braita that they were talking about matters of gitin or kiddushin, and he gave her a get, or he gave her kiddushin, and he didn't say anything. Rabbi Yosef says, that's good, that's sufficient. We know from the context. Rabbi Yehuda says you have to say something explicitly. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shemuel behu shasukin beoto inyan. So Rav Yudas, the name of Shemuel, says as long as they were still discussing that matter. If they went off on a tangent, let's say they're talking about Kiddushin, and then, the baseball game comes on, they start talking about baseball, and then he gives her a coin. And then that's no good. They have to, at the very minute that he's giving her the coin, they have to be talking about Kiddushin. They can't go off on a tangent. רבי יהודה אומר, והוא עסוקים באותו עניין, רבי אלעזר בר רבי שמעון אומר, אף על פי שאין עסוקים באותו עניין. And so Rabbi Yoshaya supports the same law as Shemuel. One is in Bavel, Rabbi Yoshaya is in Eretz Yisrael. They have to be talking about the same thing. And these two early Amoraim are repeating a controversy that was from the times of the Tanaim, because Rabbi also says they have to be talking about that particular subject of Kiddushin at the time, whereas Rabbi Elazar but Rabbi Shimon says even if they're not talking about that matter at the time, it's still okay. Now we ask about this the last opinion. Wait a second. If they're not talking about Kiddushin, they're just watching a baseball game, talking about the score and how good this pitcher is, and then he just gives her a coin. How could that work, right? How do you know what he's talking about? He didn't say anything. He's just giving her a coin, and that's Kiddushin? Doesn't make any sense. Amar Abaye, Abaye explains, no, even according to the Rabbi Rabbi Shimon, has to be that they had been talking about Kiddushin, and once they were talking about Kiddushin, they were talking about the flowers, and then they went on a tangent about types of flowers, and then, right, they were talking about the weather, and then they came back to Kiddushin. In other words, they're still talking about, they had been talking about Kiddushin, they went on a tangent, and at that time he gives her a coin. That's okay, because we know that this is a tangent, but the basic thing that they're talking, a basic subject they're talking about is Kiddushin, and therefore it's valid, whereas according to the other sages, they have to be talking directly about Kiddushin, not about some tangent that came up in the middle. Amar Rav Yehuna, Amar Shemuel, halacha Rabbi Yoseh. We already quoted this just now. Shemuel says that we follow Rabbi Yoseh, that if you don't say anything and you're talking about that subject matter, that's good. Amar le Rav Yemar Rav Asher, ve'ela had Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shemuel, kol she'no yodeh b'tiv gitin v'kiddushin, lo yeh lo esek ba'emahem, afilu lo shemi'a le, had Rav Huna Amar Shemuel, Amar le in hachina mehem. And now Rav Yemar asks Rav Asher, when Shemuel said a rule, anyone who doesn't know the nature, right, the details of Gitin and Kiddushin, who hasn't studied these halachot, should not have any dealings with them, right? A rabbi who doesn't know, maybe he knows a lot about the laws of pots and pans and kosher and things like that, but if he doesn't know anything about Gitin and Kiddushin, so he should not go ahead and start doing Kiddushin and performing Gitin. Now the question is, in how much detail? What if he knows all the halachot, but he never heard of this statement of Rav Huna in the name of Shemuel, who said that the halacha is like Rabbi Yoseh, that if they're talking about Kiddushin or Gitin, and then he gives her the item without saying anything, that's mikudeshet, or the get is valid. What if he knows everything, but he doesn't know about that? Would Shemuel say that he should not be involved? And Rav Asher answered, yes, indeed so. This is an important rule because it can come up. See, it's easy to do a Kiddushin if everything goes right. But the question is, what if something goes wrong in the middle? Right? Something drops, they said the wrong thing, they did it the wrong way. So then you have to know, well, is it good? We have to do it over again. How does it work? What are we going to do? The Gitin is very complicated. So one has to know all the ins and outs of what if he didn't say the formula, right? He forgot to say the formula, and he gives her the ring. They're under the chuppah. Everybody's there. They're there for the wedding. They're obvious. They're talking about Gitin. They're talking about Kiddushin, but he didn't actually say Harat Mikudeshet Li, and gives her the ring. So now what? Does he have to do it again? What if they change their minds now? Do they need a get? Okay, very complicated. So one has to know all of these details. We're now re-quoting a statement that we saw earlier regarding divorce. Natana gitav amar laharet mishulachat haret megoreshet hareat muteret lechol adam harehi megoreshet. If a husband gives his wife a get and says, you are sent away, you are divorced, you are permitted to everyone, then that's a good divorce. These are the normal standard formulas. Now we say, building on that, Pishita natan la gita, pamada lishto hareat bat horin lo amar velo chelum. It's a simple matter that if he gives her a get and says you are free, he said nothing, because that's a language that you would tell a slave you are free. So he was a slave, she was a slave, now she or he is free. But a wife is not a slave, even though some wives feel like that. But so therefore, that is not a formula of divorce. Wrong category. And if someone tells his slave woman, you are permitted to everyone, also, he said nothing, because she was not prohibited to everyone from before. Wrong category. She was a slave. She has to be freed. She was not prohibited, that she needs to be permitted now. So, wrong formulas doesn't do anything. But if he tells his wife, you are on your own. Now that is a good formula for emancipating a slave. Right now you own yourself. But what about for to end a marriage? Do we say that he was talking about melacha only? Right now your work is your own. That's good for a slave, not for a wife. Or does he mean totally? You are totally on your own, meaning in all ways, for divorce also, and marriage also. Now you're on your own. You're not under your husband's authority in any way. So then there would be a good language. So we're not clear what this would mean. Here's the answer. השתה ומה עבד כנעני תקני לגופה כי אמר לה הרי את לעצמך לגמרי כאמר לה אישה דלקני לגופה לא כל שכן. So we're going to learn it from this braita. The language of a get shichrur to free a slave is, behold, you are free, or you are for yourself. Now, if regarding Eved Kanani, whose body is owned by the master, and if he says you are for yourself, that means totally. He gets his own body, everything. So a woman whose body is not owned by her husband, it's only the right to be with someone else, the right to marry anybody else. That is what the husband acquires, not ownership over herself. So all the more so. In other words, if this language can break a strong ownership over a slave, then all the more so it can break a weaker type of ownership, which is ownership of marriage, which is just ownership over the right for her to be with anybody else. Amar le Ravina, so that's a good kavachomer, we accept it. Amar le Ravina le Rav Asher. Amar le Avdo, en li esek becha, mai, mi amrinan en li esek becha legamre kamar le, o dilma le malacha ka amar le. Ravina asked Rav Asher, he tells his wife, a man tells his slave, I have no business with you. Right, this is something that we've discussed regarding a partnership in land. He says, I have no business in this land. So here, a person tells us, I have no business in you. So what about that? Do we say that he means totally, I have no business with you at all, and now you are free to go? Or maybe he means in a more limited sense that I have no business regarding your labor. I don't need your work anymore. But you're still a slave. He's just saying that you don't need to work. But doesn't change his status as a slave. That's the question. We have the answer from the following statement. If someone sells his Eved Kanani to a non-Jew, you're not supposed to do that. And so if he does that, that slave goes free, right? Again, because an Eved Kanani has to keep mitzvot. He has to keep Shabbat. Now you're going to sell the slave to a non-Jew who might work them on Shabbat. So you're not allowed to do that. The slave gains his freedom in halachically from the first master. And nevertheless, he still needs a get shichrur from his first master. If we force the first master to give him a get shichrur because he treated him badly in this way, and such that then he may still be enslaved by this non-Jew according to whatever Roman law, but if he should run away or go free, then he would not have to go back to his first Jewish master. Now, on that, still is all part of the answer. Amar Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, באמת דברים אומרים שלא כתב עליו עונו, אבל כתב עליו עונו, זהו שחרורו. הכי דמי עונו, אמר רב ששת, כתב לה, כשתברח ממנו, אין לי עסק בך. Rashbag says, when is this true that we forced the first master, Jewish master, to give him a get shichrur? Only when he did not write an ono. But if he wrote an ono, then the ono is equivalent to a get shichrur. What is an ono? When he writes, as he's selling this slave to the non-Jew, he writes, should you escape, then I have no business with you. That's the same as a divorce. That's the same as freeing him, right? Now, listen, you're going to be owned by this non-Jew, right, as is under Roman law, so whatever, so you're there. But if you were able to get your freedom, then you don't have to come back to me. You are totally free from me. What do we see from this? That this phrase, En li asik becha, is a language of emancipation. It means I have no business with you at all, not just for your work. It means I don't own you at all anymore. Okay, next. Amar Abaye, hamekadesh b'milveh, ena mekudeshet. B'hanat milveh, mekudeshet, v'asur lasot ken, mipnei haramat ribit. Someone, he wants to get married to this woman, and happens to be she owes him money. From some previous thing, she needed to borrow money. The guy said, okay, here's $100. Here you go. And now he says, Haret mikudeshet li. With that, remember that $100 you owe me? I forgive the loan, and you'll be mikadeshet to me with that $100. That's no good, not mikudeshet. Even though in her, in her ledger, she now can take off that debt of $100. So there's a total positive in her assets. Nevertheless, it doesn't work because Kiddushin has to be something that he actually gives her that now she didn't have before. It can't just be erasing a minus. It has to be something that he gives her. Now, what about Hana'at Milveh? We're going to explain in a second. This would mean, like, let's say she has to pay back next week. And he said, you know what? For the benefit that I'll let you pay back in a year. So the benefit of having the loan for an extra year, you're mikudeshet to me with that. So that's actually something that he's giving her now. That actually would work because he's giving her something that she didn't have before. He's not just erasing a negative. He's giving her something positive. However, it's prohibited to do so because this is similar to ribit, interest. It's not actual ribit. He's not saying you have to pay me back more than I gave you. He gave her $100 and she still has to pay $100. But now, nevertheless, there is a benefit in having a longer loan. And so, this guy is getting something, she rather is getting something out of the longer loan. And in turn, she is giving him the right of marriage so that instead of him having to come up with a coin or a ring, so now he has a benefit. He doesn't have to come up with a coin or a ring. He benefits the Kiddushin from the lengthening of a loan, but that's kind of like a ribit. Okay, so let's analyze. What's the case of benefit of a loan? So I already gave the answer, but the Gemara has to go through it. So if it's talking about that he actually made interest and he says, I'll give you 4, you have to give me back 5, then that's actually interest. And also that would be like the first case of a loan. Let's say he gave her 4 and they said you have to give me back 5 beforehand. And then he comes and says, you know what? You don't have to pay me back. So that's the first case of milveh where we said it doesn't work. It doesn't work if she has to pay back the same amount. It doesn't work if she would have had to give back more. Either way, he's not giving her something now. So the Kiddushin is no good. So the answer is la siricha darvach la zimna. Rather, he extended the time. Oh, that makes sense because now this is a new benefit that she is gaining. So therefore, technically, the Kiddushin is valid. Nevertheless, he is getting a benefit for the time value of the money, and that's ribit. Now, he's not getting any monetary defined benefit. He's not getting back more than he gave her. So it's not totally ribit, but it nevertheless is still a benefit from the time value of money. Now she is mikudeshet to him, and so it's prohibited to use that. Amar Rava, helach maneh al menat shetachazrehu li b'mecher lo kana b'isha ena mikudeshet b'fion haben and beno padui. If someone says, here, I'm giving you 100 dinar on condition that you give it back to me. So a gift on condition is complicated because on the one hand it is a gift, but he has to give it back. If he doesn't give it back, then it was never a gift in the first place, so the gift never happened at all. So let's assume that the gift happens and he gives it back. But so is that a good gift? Because, well, in the end, the recipient didn't receive anything because they have to give it back. So the Hadava says, if it's a sale, then the sale is no good. You can buy something with money, and the giving of the money would be a transaction. But if it's this kind of giving, and then on condition that you give it back, then there's no transaction here. If it's for Kiddushin, there is no Kiddushin. Even though he's giving her money, here you go, here's money, but she can't keep it. She doesn't have a benefit from it. She has to give it back. No good. Pidyon haben, if the father would give the Kohen, it says, here's 5 coins, on condition that you give it back, the child is not redeemed. However, Rava continues, Bitruma yasai denitina v'asu lasot ken mipnei shenir'eh kekohen ha'mesayeya bebet hageranot. Let's say it's tiruma. And so he gives some produce to the Kohen on condition that the Kohen will give it back to him. That actually works. He fulfilled his obligation of tiruma. Because he gave it to the Kohen. Now, this guy who takes it back, he's Israel, the farmer. The farmer still won't be able to eat that terumah because it still has the holy status of terumah. Nevertheless, once he gave it to the Kohen and got it back, he fulfilled terumah, and now he has ownership over the terumah, such that he can go and sell it to a different Kohen or to the same Kohen, so he can get monetary benefit out of it. So technically, this is a valid giving, even though he gets it back. And nevertheless, the rabbi said one should not do that. It's prohibited because it's similar to, and it looks like a Kohen who's helping out in the threshing floor. Let's say a Kohen, he comes and says to the farmer, I'm going to come help you out in the threshing floor, do some threshing with you, with the agreement, said or unsaid agreement, that in the benefit of the Kohen helping out on the farm, the farmer will give the Kohen all the terumah. That's not fair because it makes an uneven playing field, or uneven threshing floor, if you will. Because now the terumah is supposed to be a free gift to all Kohanim because of their status, because of their job that they have to be serve Bet HaMikdash, also be Kohanim, be judges, be teachers, and so this is for them. Now you're going to be showing favoritism to a particular Kohen because he's helping you out on the farm. So this would be the same thing, that you're giving it to this Kohen because he's going to give it back to you. So you're only giving it to him because he's doing something good for you. So that's similar to a Kohen helping out on the threshing floor, and the rabbis prohibited that. Now, my kasaba Rava. That's Rava's statement, and now we analyze it. What does he think about a gift on condition of returning it? If he thinks that a gift on condition of returning it is a gift, then all of them should be valid. And if he thinks that it's not a gift, then even terumah should not be. Why is he making a distinction between the first 3 on the list and that are no good, and terumah, which is good? Furthermore, in a different statement, Rava said that this is a valid gift, a gift on condition. Rava himself said, if I own an etrog, I went, I bought it, and now on the holiday, I tell my friend doesn't have an etrog. So I say, here is an etrog, it's yours, it's a gift, on condition that you return it to me. And then that friend, he took it, he said the beracha, he fulfilled the mitzvah, and he returned it to me. He fulfilled the obligation. In other words, it is a valid gift. And if he doesn't return it to me, well, then he didn't fulfill the condition, and therefore it was never his. So he doesn't fulfill it, because on the first day of Sukkot, when it's a mitzvah deoraita, the sezul kachtem lachem is when you have to own it. And so you see here that Rava thinks that a gift on condition of returning it is a valid gift. So how come he said in those 3 cases up above that it's no good? Ela maravashe bechuluhu kaneh lebar meisha lefi she'en isha niknet bechalipin. Rather, Rav Asher said, I disagree, and I think that a gift on condition of returning it is a gift, and in all the cases, it would be a good gift. It would be good for Pidyon Haben. It would be good for a sale. It would be good for Terumah. It would be good for Lulav. It would not, however, even Rav Asher would agree, be good for Kiddushin of a woman, because a woman cannot be acquired through Chalipin. Chalipin is a symbolic exchange where the item being given, like a handkerchief or whatever, can be even worth less than a peruta. So there's nothing actually it's not a monetary amount being given. Now the gift on condition of returning is not exactly chalipin, but it's similar to chalipin in that it's something that you're giving that has no monetary value because you have to return it. So just like with chalipin, it can work in other cases, but can't work for kiddushin, because you have to give something of value. So too, matana amenat le'achzir, although you're giving something, since you have to give it back, you're not giving something of lasting value to her. And so therefore, Rav Asher says, I agree with you, in Kiddushin is different. Amar le Rav Huna mor bere, de Rav Nechemia de Rav Asher, hachi amrinan, mishemeh de Rava kevatech. And then Rav Huna Mor, the son of Rav Nechemia, told Rav Asher, you know what? We actually said that in the name of Rava, exactly as you said. So Rav Asher was saying, this must be the correct. And says, in fact, that's in fact what Rava said. So thank you for correcting our understanding of Rava's ruling. Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen ve'amen.